are on election watch.
This waiting game could finally be over.
Call the election, call it now.
This is a tired old opposition.
And let the people of Australia decide.
Their last set of plans were rejected at the last election.
End this government.
Prime Minister firing the starting gun on a marathon 41-day campaign.
Scott Morrison flew to Canberra first thing this morning
To see the Governor-General and call the election.
PM Press will be at 11:20. We'll bring it to you live.
We do have that Prime Ministerial media conference due in 10 plus minutes.
Earlier today, I visited His Excellency the Governor-General to call an election for the House of Representatives and half of the Senate.
Scott Morrison has called the election for the 21st of May.
And both leaders have already made their early pitch to lead the nation.
This election is about you, no one else.
I'm ready, we are ready, and Australia is ready for a better future. In the words of the great Ramones, hey ho, let's go.
Steph, was a long time coming, but we finally got a date. And
Finally, I can plan my life for after May 21, which is now our election date.
And it's the economy that's right at the core of what Scott Morrison's got to say. The economy with a bit of defence. It's not time to risk going to Labor. That's what he'll be spending the next 6 weeks talking about.
And it was interesting, what he noted was the fact that he was saying, look, this is an election about voters, it's not about me. The reason he's saying that is because a lot of people are angry with him, right? We've had a really difficult 3 years across the country. People are upset with the government, and he knows that that can't be the focus of this election campaign, or otherwise it might not work out the way they want it to.
I love Australians. That was right at the top of his message. He'll be out there in those marginal seats trying to win back those people who might have swayed away from the coalition.
It's a choice between a government you know and a Labor opposition that you don't.
Mr Morrison then was sort of still picking up on that uncertainty theme, trying to win votes over with that, right? Saying, look, we're still going into uncertain times. Don't change leadership now. You know, you don't know what you'd get.
Have you got your bag packed?
I do. I've got one very large bag packed, ready to get on the plane this afternoon. I'll be travelling with Scott Morrison for 2 weeks. It'll be interesting to see where we go, no doubt.
Thank you very much.
Well, the federal election campaign is officially underway.
Morning, we're following the federal election campaign as Australia's political leaders hit the ground running in a 6-week-long race to the polls.
It's not that cold.
We're starting the campaign here in Bass. Flipping this seat could be absolutely critical to Labor's chances on May 21.
Do you know the official cash rate off the top of your head?
Oh look, we can do the old Q&A stuff over 50
But
different.
do you know it?
Over 50 different figures.
I think the government, well, the Prime Minister set a 6-week campaign in the hope that the opposition leader might stumble, but it's happened pretty quickly.
It seemed like such a normal morning. Things were going well. He'd done these really straightforward TV crosses. He'd had, a chat with a cute family, a local family, playing in the monkey bars, and then, one question followed up by another few questions, and it all is suddenly off the rails.
The tone completely changed, and it was like it just fell to pieces for him.
What's the national unemployment rate?
National unemployment rate at the moment is, I think it's 5.4. Sorry, I'm not sure what it is.
And it's going to be particularly damaging, you'd think, because this does go to what the coalition's been talking about. This is economic credentials, and they are, when you're trying to be the Prime Minister, applying for the job, they're reasonably straightforward questions, you'd think.
Yeah, and I think this has made it very easy for the government today. They've been trying to portray Anthony Albanese as incompetent for some time, and today he didn't help himself, not being able to answer those pretty basic economic measures.
It is, of course, only day one, but you can be sure the coalition are going to make sure Labor don't forget about this.
Over here, PM. Over here, Scott Morrison seized on the
The
Gaffe.
PM is jumping on Albo's gaffe, but faced questions of his own over a minister in exile.
Will Alan Tudge be in your cabinet if your government is returned then?
Alan Tudge is still in my cabinet.
Pretty soon after Scott Morrison called the election, he was facing questions about Alan Tudge, his education minister, sort of. It came out very quickly that you can both be in cabinet, but on the backbench at the same time.
Yeah, that was the big conundrum. How can you be in the ministry and out of the ministry? As it turns out, Alan Tudge is simply the education minister in exile. He, of course, stood down from the front bench last month. He's not receiving a ministerial salary. Someone else is doing his job. But according to Scott Morrison, he's still in cabinet. It's pretty clear that He's agreed to stay on the sidelines for now, and if the coalition wins, he will be back in cabinet. But I think perhaps what was hard for Scott Morrison on that day was it emerged, news.com.au reported that Tudge's former staffer, Rochelle Miller, is on track to receive a $500,000 taxpayer-funded payout.
A payment no one knew anything about.
No one knew anything about, despite the fact that Tudge had been cleared of breaching ministerial standards. It didn't really make a lot of sense. And I think, again, the danger here is that it's reminding voters of the coalition's woman problem.
I have no visibility on that at all. I can't confirm to you whether a payment has even been made.
Those questions were continuing into the next day. Scott Morrison is there doing FM radio interviews, getting these questions, saying, hang on, how is there a payment if nothing has happened? He essentially got off the hook. As soon as Anthony Albanese's first press conference gets underway, we see this gaffe that then swamps absolutely any questions about Alan Tudge.
Look, there has been a bear trap sitting in the long grass for Anthony Albanese. It's got the economy written on it. Anthony Albanese, his very first press conference on the first morning of the first day of a 6-week campaign, weighs into that long grass, puts his foot squarely into it. I think it is going to be a defining moment of this campaign. It's a dangerous one for Anthony Albanese, and guess what? It wasn't a gotcha question. This was a fundamental question that went to very simple economic data. He should have known it. It was a big mistake.
Anthony Albanese has apologised for his mistake.
Is this the day you lost the election?
You are being melodramatic. I'm human. But when I make a mistake, I'll fess up to it and I'll set about correcting that mistake.
He apologised for making a mistake. He said, all right, I'm going to fess up. That's the kind of guy I am. He made a virtue out of it. So it's not just sort of a confection of the press gallery here. Labor knew how damaging this very moment would be.
We have now a situation where in the first week, Anthony Albanese's been struggling to get his mojo back. He has been unnerved by the whole of this. In fact, the whole of the Labor team has been unnerved by this.
Well, Jade, another day on the election campaign, and shock horror, we're back in another manufacturing business. This is how the sausage is made, so to speak. These are the pictures that all the TVs will use tonight. The question leads to, election campaigns are very staged, but what are you sort of picking up so far in the past few days as to how Scott Morrison's camp is running this side of the campaign?
Yeah, well, obviously it's really early in the campaign so far. We're only in the first week, but it's been pretty media managed so far. I mean, earlier, like before the campaign started, there was obviously a few incidents at some pubs. I'm sick of your bull. But this has been very tightly controlled, and that's obviously prevented, quite a few kind of like unexpected events.
How are you? One of the things we're seeing at these businesses is that Mr. Morrison always has a go. Are you picking up on that? He's now trying something else.
If we get him on a sewing machine, it should be pretty interesting.
And very different. You see on the Labor side, Mr. Albanese doesn't really get involved with making things or doing things, but Mr. Morrison is very confident in a campaign to put himself out there and almost come across as that dad.
Yeah, very hands-on. I mean, we've seen him, washing hair and things like that in the past. He's always out there, so I think we'll probably see a lot more of that during the campaign.
Now, Jade, no more talking. Let's go and follow the Prime Minister so we don't miss out on any key events.
The Labor leader is trying to shake off his economic gaffe with a big health promise.
My theory is shake it off.
The Prime Minister is putting jobs and unemployment firmly in focus.
Jobs, and jobs.
It's tried and true territory.
Health and Medicare.
Australians won't need their wallet, they'll just need their Medicare card.
A strong economy means a stronger future.
From the economy to health.
Labor will always prioritise Medicare.
This is a tough job, and it won't be easy under Albanese.
I'm not sure if you've noticed, but Scott Morrison wants to talk about jobs. Jobs. That's all we've heard. But Anthony Albanese is really focusing in on health. Since we saw his budget reply speech, he wanted to put aged care and the healthcare sector right at the front and centre of what Labor would be campaigning on early.
It's very safe ground for the Labor Party and also traditional strength. And I think the theme that they're trying to build is that for Labor, health is a priority. And of course, after a pandemic, I think health is at the forefront of a lot of people's minds.
And it worked well in South Australia at a state election. They're hoping that that could then come out federally. But Scott Morrison doesn't want to talk about the pandemic at all. It's all about the economy.
No, he wants to talk about this remarkable post-pandemic bounce back in the jobs growth. It also is something that is not flood response. rapid antigen tests, vaccines. So that sort of stuff, Scott Morrison doesn't want to talk about it because it's on some of the failures and mishaps of the past 3 years. He doesn't want to be judged.
Canberra Liberal Senator Zed Seselja has made a lightning dash to Solomon Islands.
We'll hold talks with top officials in Honiara today.
Stephen, pretty extraordinary during the middle of an election campaign, and a minister has had to be dispatched overseas on an urgent diplomatic mission.
Yeah, that's right, and not only any old minister, Zed Seselja, who's not a senior minister, but he is facing a stiff competition here in the ACT, where his Senate seat is up for grabs, and he's got the Greens and the Independents nipping at his heels. So the fact that he's gone to Honiara speaks to the depth of the concerns that the government's got. And of course, you know, this is all about this security pact leaked a couple of weeks ago, which is pretty broadly worded, pretty ambiguous, in which the government fears could actually open the door to a Chinese military presence on Solomon Islands.
We've heard military leaders publicly say that it will change the calculus for the Australian Defence Force. They'll have to change the way they do maritime and air operations near Australia. Solomon's is less than 2,000 kilometres from Australia's eastern coast, but more importantly, it's also in the middle of a whole lot of waterways, strategic maritime routes. So having a potentially hostile naval presence in that part of the world would complicate things incredibly.
We know that there's nothing concrete he can really offer, but if he can say that both sides of politics are determined to do everything possible to try and preserve their primacy with Solomon Islands, perhaps he can convince Manasseh Sogavare just to hold for a little bit longer.
Political leaders are ramping up campaigning today ahead of the Easter long weekend.
Between them, these leaders covered 5 events in 3 states by my counting anyway.
The Prime Minister in Tasmania, the Liberal Party's most marginal seat.
The Labor leader in the Coleridge-Hunter region.
The first week of the campaign has seen both leaders spending a lot of time between Sydney, northern Tasmania, with brief visits to Victoria. One of the troubles with going to northern Tasmania and campaigning with Bridget Archer, the most marginal coalition MP, is it brings back to the fore an undelivered anti-corruption body.
Exactly, a promise from the 2019 election that's nowhere near being delivered. And this has been a running sore for the Morrison government. During the pandemic, Scott Morrison used the pandemic to say, well, you know, can't deal with everything at the same time. Now that the pandemic is receding, it's still a problem. Bridget Archer, she's the one who was his tormentor in Parliament. She's the one who stood up against him, probably bettered her chances at winning Bass.
What I have said and what I will continue to say is that I would like to see the positive promotion of integrity in public life.
It's what unites all those independent candidates
It's
that are
the teal
threatening
candidates.
his Liberals. And it is very unclear as we sit here today what a re-elected coalition government would do with a federal
Well, it looks like
body.
it's going to do nothing except with the model that it's got.
Which is a friendless model. It has no support in this place. It has very little support outside of this place.
Both leaders have called a long weekend truce.
Political hostilities are being put to one side, for now at
The
least.
2 leaders have spent the morning at Good Friday church services.
What a difference a week makes in politics. Go back to the end of last week, Scott Morrison was a Prime Minister under siege. We were waiting for him to call the election. He was facing a relentless character assassination by his own side. And yet here we are at the end of the first week of the campaign, and he seemingly is looking kind of confident. He's looking comfortable on the campaign trail, and the focus is all on the other guy, on Anthony Albanese.
That other guy comes into the election with the expectation that it's his election to lose. And you've got a situation where the person who literally has everything to lose, the Prime Ministership and government, is running around the country like a carefree insurgent that's got nothing to lose at all.
And so what we have seen this week is him surrounding himself with frontbenchers. He's had Josh Frydenberg, he's had Maurice Payne, he's had Angus Taylor. He's no longer, the centrepiece of the coalition campaign that he was back in 2019. And even when he's asked about his level of popularity, he's started to use lines like, well, if you go to the dentist, you don't care if you like them, you care that they're doing a good job. So that's his pitch. It doesn't matter if you don't like me, just look at what I've done for the economy.
And I hate to say it, but it's as we ended last year with the brief, this is very much a better the devil you know strategy.